Welcome to Kaks Bar and Podcast, Canada's first podcast bar. What that means is you can come here for food, you can come here for drinks, you can also come here and record a podcast. Come on down, we're located in downtown Calgary, Alberta in the Beltline area. See you soon. And we're rolling. I'm here today with Kat. Kat, is your last name Jones or?
It is, yeah.
It is Kat Jones? Okay, perfect. Kat, she has multiple things going on. Well, she's from Calgary, first and foremost. And a big portion of her working career, she was in the airline industry as a flight attendant.
Yes.
But the neat thing about that is she had a kind of pseudo-secret social media thing going on for the longest time. It's on Instagram. I'm sure we can tell people about it now because you revealed your identity, I guess.
Have, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's called Jump Seat Confessionals. I'm going to have that on the show notes. Kat has also ventured into marketing. She has a marketing studio business. It's at Kat Jones Creative. That's also in the show notes there. Give you a quick little shameless plug. They do content strategy. She's a content curator. She does art direction as well as social media marketing. Kat has also a hospitality background, just like myself. And today, she also has a part-time work with the mustard seed.
Yeah.
Then, we're just going to get to know Kat today and dive into her world a little bit and maybe getting some fun stories from your
for sure.
flight attendant days and things like that. Unless you want to talk about anything else, go ahead and go, we're just chatting it up. I got the pleasure of meeting Kat a couple weeks ago. So I thought she'd make a great guest. And now here we are because this is what we do at Kaks Bar and Podcast. We meet Calgarians from all walks of life, and from there we tell people stories as well as just chat about anything and everything, really.
Cool, yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with the Jump Seat Confessionals real quick. Can you just tell everyone about that?
Sure. So it was around, I think, 2018 or 2017, I was flying for WestJet. I think I can say that.
Yeah.
And I was part-time and I was on the road doing like a lot of Netflix and binging and not really spending my time on the road very effectively. So I went back to school online for PR, so public relations, communications, and I was taking a bunch of social media classes, which were really interesting to me. I just have always liked social media. I have a good relationship with it. I was like way back in MySpace days, like coding my MySpace pages and stuff like that. So
were you on Calgary Planet? Do you remember that one?
No.
Okay. All right.
Oh my God.
I don't know how old you are. Maybe I'm older.
I need to know what this is. But yeah, like Nexopia. Remember Nexopia?
A little bit. That one's going way back in the little memory archives.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So I was really curious about everything I was learning and I was wanting to kind of put it into action. And I actually had an idea for a podcast, which was Jump Seat Confessionals, which the idea would have been to go and have the conversations that we have in the jump seat as flight attendants. Because every time you go to work as a flight attendant, you're meeting your crew for the first time. That crew is brand new every shift. Mm-hmm. So we... you get that. I know, right?
I thought everyone's just like all the time, or
I mean, you'll see people if you bid for the same things or you're around the same seniority, you'll see the same people, reoccurringly, but every crew is kind of brand new.
Okay.
Including the pilots and everything. But you really bond quickly and there's just like really quick rapport, and you'll sometimes find yourself in the jump seat next to a flight attendant that you just met like 10 minutes ago. And all of a sudden you're talking about like your divorce and your fertility issues or your,
right away.
Like sometimes it's pretty quick.
What's your fertility issue?
Maybe not that quick, but you're kind of in the galley just getting to know each other. And then sometimes, if someone's having a bad day or, they'll just be transparent about it. Hey, heads up, I might be a little, scattered today because this is what's going on. And then you're on takeoff. Yeah. You spend a lot of time in that jump seat with this person. And so then you have these conversations, and some people call it jump seat therapy. Anyways, I always call it jump seat confessionals because like when I got pregnant, for example, the first person to find out other than my partner was a flight attendant that I sat next to in the jump seat. It was like, how's your day going? I just found out I was pregnant. It was like kind of this crazy thing. So anyways, that's where the idea came from. And I didn't really have a lot of capacity to start a whole podcast. As you know, it's a lot of work. So I thought, oh, I'll just start the building the audience and, engaging with who I'd want to, be engaging with on this podcast idea. And then it just kind of turned into more of a tweet account.
Yeah.
And
it's a bunch of one-liners like on the Jumpseat Confessionals. It's like a post with a tweety kind of one-liner. They're all pretty clever, and then okay.
Yeah, so you can kind of see, if you go into you can see the journey of Jumpseat. So it does start as this kind of funny tweet account, making little jabs at passengers or other flight attendants. And because of that, I was really careful. We signed a pretty strict social media policy with WestJet. I'm no longer employed with them, but I wanted to be really mindful of that. And I didn't want any kind of backlash. Sometimes you're kind of poking fun a little bit.
Is there any post-career thing you sign on the WestJet thing, or it's can't talk about this?
No, obviously any intellectual property, I think I wouldn't be able to, be here's their training documents or something like that. But in terms of just, I just didn't want to get any kind of heat for being, someone seeing it and be like, your flight attendants making fun of us during boarding or something, so so it just started as a tweet account and did it completely anonymously, purposely didn't follow people who worked at WestJet.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't want that. And so just grew it completely organically, had really good engagement, and just would try the things that I was learning about at, at school.
Yeah.
Implementing what I was learning. And then during the pandemic, obviously we all got furloughed. Aviation was decimated.
Yeah.
No one knew if we were going to be going back. No one knew kind of what was going to go on, as in a lot of industries, obviously. And so you could actually see that there too. All of a sudden the tweets go into pandemic, all about masks and, oh, I miss the smell of jet fuel in the morning and stuff like that. And then I found my way to corporate aviation. So in corporate aviation, it's really hard to find ways. You just, first of all, you sign pretty strict NDAs, but also it's really hard to make fun of people or find those funny antidotes that happen.
Is it because they're all just extra well behaved because they're on a company jet, so everyone's just kind of in a suit and sitting there and kind of giving no one any material to work with or whatever?
Yeah, for sure. That's a lot of it. Or if it's owners, they're just boring. They just sit there and they're just on their laptops or having their meal, and they're all quite polite and usually a pleasure to serve. So it's you're not really, the general public is a different beast for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
As you would know from hospitality.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And just being on flights myself and, I don't know, having a few drinks as you get on the flight or whatever. I would imagine that the corporate guys are hiding something, though. I'm pretty sure they're a pretty wild bunch or whatever, if they're flying. Well, they're probably just not acting like that for those flights, right?
Yeah, or you'll see them come on after they've been somewhere where that's what's happened, and you're nursing their hangovers or whatever.
They show up, the suits are proper. By the time they come back, it's half untucked, no tie, that Rolex you saw him wearing is gone, hair's all frazzled. And they're like, don't, just don't.
Don't ask.
Don't ask. Give me my Caesar now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's basically the Jumpseat story. That was the origin story. And then now it's kind of just become more of a social listening tool for me. It was definitely a way to engage with the flight attendant community during the pandemic. And then, and then it kind of became more of an aesthetic account.
What was that show called where it was Blake Lively and she had a secret situation going on?
What?
I never watched it, but I know I know about it.
Was it the one?
My God, I look ridiculous right now. Girls out there are probably you're an idiot.
I know exactly what you're talking. Was it Blake Lively or was it?
Pretty sure it was Blake Lively. Yeah.
A flight attendant show?
No, it wasn't. But it's a secret. She does vlogs or stories?
Gossip Girl.
Gossip Girl. Like,
XOXO Gossip Girl.
yeah. Did you have jump seat confessionals, almost like a pseudo Gossip Girl at the start because no one knew it was you, right?
Totally. And
Yeah.
then it was so funny because people that I knew started sending me my own content. Like being like, haha, this is so funny. And I'd be like, oh yeah, so hilarious. So, she's so funny.
Yeah. I gotta admit here, I haven't fully explored it like to its full history. So
Yeah.
how deep do some of these how spicy or edgy do some of these quotes go?
You know, I did try to keep it. Again, some of it was,
I know it's in fun.
it was always in fun. And it was also me sort of experimenting with what the audience liked to, hear.
Yeah.
Because most of the audience on there is flight attendants.
Yeah.
I'd say mostly from the US, if I like look at my insights or whatever. So they don't really get too spicy or like risque, so to speak. It's more, they get just, I think the most, offbeat would just be really just making fun of people,
right?
You know, like passengers.
I guess that's what I mean. Like, did you ever worry like some airline might be like, let's trace the IP address on this account because like, I don't know, like this person's roasting like everyone or
no,
something.
like I was pretty careful about not mentioning any specific brands or airlines or anything like
it's
that.
Just vague enough that you can get your point across.
Or people would be like, oh, I know what she's talking about. Right. You know, kind of, there was a phase at the end of the pandemic where people were starting to go back to flying, where they would, where especially in the States, flight attendants were getting literally punched in the face.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
I saw so many videos of that. It was crazy. Like,
so there would, there'd be some kind of reference to that, or when the flight attendants had to like duct tape somebody to a chair.
What?
And then they got fired for it because they're not supposed to do that. But I don't really know what else you would do when when you're stuck on a plane.
What happened with that one? Sorry. Like,
some guy got aggressive with the crew. And
they're already in the air.
Yeah. Okay. So we call that an unruly situation. And there's different levels of unrulies. And it goes from like level 1, which is just basically beacon off your flight attendant or being like, no, I'm not going to do what you're telling me to do. And then it goes to level 4, which is like a hijacking situation. So
God. What was this one?
This was level 1.
Oh, 1? Okay.
This was a level 1 or level maybe going to, I would assume a level 2 because I think it was starting to get physical and they had to restrain him. But there are actually tools on the aircrafts to restrain. We have procedures for that.
Do you have a taser on board?
No taser.
Oh, okay.
That would be crazy. I don't think I would trust flight attendants with a taser on board, to be honest.
My ex.
Yeah. Exactly.
With it.
Yeah. Even some flight attendants, you're like, crazy. But no. So they used the duct tape and duct taped him to the chair, and goes against procedure. So I guess they got reprimanded.
That sounds pretty extreme too. Like, because what if the guy had to go poo or something? And now he's gonna like.
Then he'd probably make a point and just do it right there. Ooh. Which bodily fluids are also no stranger to the flight attendant experience. So unfortunately, I've seen every type of bodily fluid on the floor of the lab, which is why if you go into the lab with bare feet, we are all judging you very harshly, like extremely.
When would you ever go in there barefoot, though?
Oh, you'd be shocked.
Like, why would you have to?
People take off their shoes on the plane all the time.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay.
They just take off their shoes and they're like, oh, I got to go to the bathroom. And
actually.
Barefoot.
Yeah. You know what? You're right. I did do that myself when I was a long flight one time to Hong Kong. I remember it was just such a long flight.
You're probably half asleep.
Yeah. And like I was close enough to the back, I remember. So I just had my shoes off and I saw someone else do it. You're right. I totally did that.
I mean, like socks are what? It's also gross, but barefoot.
Yeah.
Like
barefoot's gross, but the sock thing, you're right. I mean, what if you're just getting someone's jizz like on the bottom of your sock?
100%.
Yeah, you're like, man, my socks are crunchy now.
Totally. You're like, this is weird. It's familiar. No.
Okay, I'm sorry, you got my curiosity, imagination going now. Like, can you tell me like like one of these crazy scenarios that you've seen that you've like transferred over to a jump seat confessional?
So my jump seat confessionals on my on my account wouldn't probably, we would maybe like reference this a little bit. I probably could have gone more into the confessional part of the jump seat confessional, which is I'm sort of starting to move into that a little bit.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Like what do you mean by the confessional part?
Well, just like the element of, okay, those moments where you're in the jump seat and you're telling a perfect stranger something that you might not even tell like one of your best friends.
Do we want to give an example here?
Well, I mean, like I've been in the jump seat and I mean, like my example of telling the girl that I was pregnant, but I mean, you'll be, coming home from Cancun with a flight attendant that went out the night before and, she's like,
got after it.
Yeah. She's like, how, she's like, you're going to have to do most of the work today because I, was up really late with a gentleman caller. And you're like, yes. Oh, but you're married or,
Oh, yeah. Stuff like
those types of things where you're kind of like, oh, we're getting into it now. And then it kind of opens a can of worms. And then you're all of a sudden talking about like,
is there a code amongst the flight attendants not to like rat each other out or whatever or something?
I mean, I don't think there's like an official code. I think it's just sort of that common decency of understanding that like, oh, this person's being really vulnerable with me right now. And usually they'll say like, oh, I haven't told anyone this yet or whatever. And then you're just kind of like, okay. So then it's just your own integrity and what you're willing to kind of,
I have a friend. I'm not gonna name his name, but he worked in the airlines as well. And for the longest time, he's like, man, he loves comedy, he loves TV, and he started writing these like potential episodes for a sitcom because he's just like, man, like the airline industry has so much stories. Like he's like, maybe it shouldn't be run forever, but he's like, there's at least 10 solid good episodes here, like between flight attendants and baggage team and like pilots and corporate and customers. And he just told me some of the funniest stories too, but all of his, like, I don't know if he was just telling it to me in such a great storytelling way that I don't know if he was exaggerating or over embellishing, but sometimes I'm just like some of the stuff he said, I'm like, wow, like if anyone ever got caught, everyone should be fired every day of the week or whatever. Or
totally. Well, there are those stories, and then there's urban legends that just get kind of passed through, like a game of telephone. So you don't know, but there's always a version of it that is true. And I mean, any WestJetter hearing this, actually any airline person hearing this would probably know of the story, the urban legend of the woman breastfeeding her cat. That is a story that's like gone through. And then you get some flight attendants who appropriate each other's stories. So then they're kind of like, oh, I was on a flight where this and this and this happened. And you're like, no, you weren't. I was on that flight, I know the person who was on that flight. So sometimes it's funny because it's easier to kind of just be like, oh, this happened at work. And then, because it's everyone wants to hear the crazy stories.
Of course. I mean, it's no different than just in general, like a white collar corporate environment, they having drinks around the water cooler, like that whole adage, like just because while you're working, you got to keep it professional.
Yeah.
But obviously everyone are human beings and everyone has a life outside of work. So then, like obviously there's a bit of gossip or whatever and things like that. So I'm sure it's no different in the airline game.
Well, and I think especially with the crews too, because it's such a unique lifestyle in the job where you're at work for 4-5 days. And so you're off time, the time that you would be going to get beers to, shoot the shit with your friends or whatever, you're still doing that, but you're doing it with this brand new group of people that you've never met before. And then sometimes like the antics that can come of that or the personalities or sometimes, just like unfolds and your friend. I also have thought about that, the sitcom thing. I'm like, there's so much here. They tried to do one was called LA to Vegas. It was like about a commuter flight
Okay.
from LA to Vegas. And it was kind of a comedy.
Yeah.
I forget who were all the actors in it. They were all kind of recognizable, but maybe
How long ago was this?
I don't know, like I want to say 3-4 years ago.
Oh, that's pretty recent. Okay.
Yeah, but they only did one season or maybe two, but it kind of got a little bit redundant because it was always the same. They built it more around the characters on the flight that kept commuting.
Yeah.
Whereas I think it'd be funny you'd have so much more to work with if you were just working with like the crews.
Right.
And like,
okay.
Yeah. So I don't know, your buddy's onto something, I think.
Yeah. Oh, well, he's abandoned that idea fully. He doesn't work in the airline game anymore for a while. So I don't know, maybe you need to take that mantle.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah, totally.
Moving along here. So what's an interesting one from the Jump Seat Confessionals? Like, give me an example of a funny like roasting or whatever of people. Like, was there just a lot of man, I don't want to get too political, but it was just like during COVID, a bunch of ridiculous like being like overdoing it with things like someone wearing like 20 masks or whatever.
Oh yeah. Or like it was like one you'd get, I mean, like we all experienced this during the pandemic. It was like one extreme or the other. Mm-hmm. So we, as flight attendants, our job, it's just literally our job to tell you the rules. Like just our job. That's what we're paid to do. So we're not trying to be assholes when we're like, hey, put your bag away. We're just telling you what to do. And it's all for safety, right? And so at the time, the safety protocol was the mask. And so, some flight and then you have the, extra layer of that, then like flight attendants have different views on things. So it was hard to stay consistent, but you'd have people coming in hazmat suits or garbage bags. One guy came on one of my flights with it, early in the pandemic when it was really unknown what was going on. And it was scary. I will admit, in the very beginning, like when it was all just really big question mark and you're seeing all of the flights from Asia come over with full hazmat suits. Yeah. And there were flight attendants who had worked through H1N1 and SARS. And they're like, this is different. This feels different. Something's going on here. And then we're all kind of like, oh, should we be worried? And everyone's just freaking out about Kobe Bryant. That I will always remember the timeline because everyone's just like, so RIP. It was very tragic. But like, that was what everyone was talking about here.
Are you a basketball fan?
Like
a little bit, like,
peripherally. Yeah.
That was a big deal.
It was a big deal. And like tragic.
Oh, that's equivalent to like, well, Elvis dying, Michael Jackson dying.
But like
Tupac dying.
I would say arguably almost heavier because of like his kids and stuff.
Oh, right? Yeah. People don't remember. There was a whole other group of people that was also on that helicopter and his child. Like, Gigi.
Oh, anyway, sorry to make that kind of depressing, but it was more just like the timeline for me is so vivid because that was going on. And then I'm going to work and everyone's in hazmat suits and you're like, should I be concerned? And then people aren't wanting to hang out with me because I'm flying. Yeah. But it's kind of, so it was so weird. But yeah, this one guy comes on full garbage bags, like just kitchen garbage bags and duct tape.
Oh my God.
And like almost
ski goggles.
Yeah, like ski goggles, like taped to the garbage bag around his head. And it was so weird. And you'd see stuff like that all the time, like different just like DIY hazmat suits.
Yeah, I guess you see the full scope of human behavior, like getting on a flight. Sorry, I was also a moment ago, you brought me back to where I was when Kobe Bryant died.
Oh, yeah.
And it was actually kind of funny.
What's yours?
Well, I was in Vietnam for a vacation.
Okay.
And then whatever, like at the time I was single and like I had a good time. Let's say, I hooked up.
Nice.
So then I was with the girl after, and then I get up and I go to the bathroom and then I check my phone and then I see Kobe died. And like I grew up like a huge basketball fan and I hated Kobe Bryant when I was way younger. But then as the years went on, he grew on me and grew on me. And towards the end, I just loved Kobe. Right. So I remember I was crying a little bit, like not profusely, but
it's like,
I was crying. And then
sad.
So, but then like, she's like in the bed, like, oh my God, he's crying. Like after we just,
you're like, no, I was really good. I was that good. Wow.
Yeah. Or I was that bad. I don't know. Like, and then she just kind of had this look on her face, kind of like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just remember I had to explain, like, no, you don't understand. There's this guy. And I couldn't even get the words out. She's like, this guy. I'm like, oh, this basketball player, Kobe Bryant, he died. Do you know who Kobe Bryant is? She didn't know who Kobe Bryant was, which is a red flag that isn't going to be
like deal breaker.
Yeah. It's like, get out. Just get out.
Yeah. Especially in that was crazy. Yeah. So yeah, funny. We all have our, I wonder if everyone remembers where they were when Kobe died.
Yeah. It was a fucked up moment. I don't know the career overall, the flight attendant career, because I read one of your posts recently. It was the one I think it was your most recent one on your Cat Jones Creative, talking about you taking a plunge to endeavor into this whole new world.
Yeah,
because you talked about in the past you were in the flight attendant game for so long, and then after the pandemic you planned your exit. Like your overall experience in the flight attendant career, like what would you say, like the highs are highs and lows are lows, or kind of thing? Or
it's such a unique job, and it's so underrated and undervalued in terms of what skills it brings to your like toolbox, so to speak. Mm-hmm. It's been hard, like I won't say hard. I'd say it's just been interesting, I'll say, navigating, coming from kind of more the, flight attendant, hospitality, customer service, and then coming into the marketing, like a bit more of the professional world, and just how people value credentials. And then how those credentials are then brought to the table in skills. And I'm just like, okay, you have this piece of paper that says you can do something because you went and did that. And I don't want to undermine education at all. Like, I learned so much.
You can, though. It's just it's useless.
Well, I just find it so interesting how, how I've had to use and get very creative with how I pitch myself in certain situations, because people don't understand that I have these skills really frontline. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't know how hard it is to market a 2-hour delay on the tarmac to an angry group of 200 passengers who are tired and hungry and thirsty and entitled.
Oh yeah.
And
the messenger thing is a real thing.
And you do know, if you can get on that mic and you can smooth it over for those people and they leave happy, like, I'm sorry. Is that not amazing marketing?
That's like, that is amazing. That's crowd control.
Right.
And that's like
I am spinning that narrative.
Yeah. Well, why did you have to you have to do that then? Obviously
it happens a lot. You get stuck, and people really get stressed out when they don't know what's going on. They, humans are all control freaks to a certain degree.
Yeah. And
traveling brings out the worst in people. It's really a lot of anxiety for people.
Oh yeah. My flight back from Vietnam back to Canada was right when COVID was like breaking out, because everyone started wearing, it wasn't mandatory to wear the mask. But I remember we were delayed for 3.5 hours. I remember looking at the clock. It was like 3.5 hours. I was stuck in Hong Kong airport, and I was by myself flying back because my buddy had a different flight. And I remember, I was getting like agitated, but then all of a sudden, like, all these cops got on the plane and had to escort this whole family out because they thought the kid was sick or something like that, right? Because they think the kid was exhibiting flu-like symptoms or whatever. And I remember just like sitting there again, processing everything. I'm like, wait a minute, it's a virus on this plane right now.
Yeah,
totally. And I'm like starting to do that or whatever, just naturally. Yeah, but I remember, like I was getting pretty agitated. I was trying to compose myself. So I don't know. But how'd you contain that crowd? Like, what'd you even say? Did you crack a joke or like?
I mean, I can't remember the specific because there were so many. To be honest, it would happen a lot. I mean, weather delays here in Canada. Yeah. It's like you're constantly mitigating people's agitation and anger, and then if there's been alcohol involved, you're coming back from, or like you're coming back or going to a vacation spot, then there's the drinking, and then people get a little more bold with their unhappiness. And so it's more just over communicating. It's not dissimilar to how you would maybe I mean this in the least patronizing way possible, but like how you speak to children.
Oh.
you give them, a lot of communication. You tell them, as much. Well, hey, buds. You just sort of give them a lot of information that, they might not necessarily need, but just it comforts them to feel like they're getting, it really comes down to the communication.
Yeah.
And just like,
I guess it depends on who's doing it. I don't know. If you were doing, say you were doing that to me, I think I'd take that well. I'd be, okay, yeah. Like, hey, bud, are you okay?
Guys, I know this is really stressful, and we all want to get home. You
do that little kid voice.
Hey, guys. Yeah. You did? No, I shouldn't be so. It is. I've been as a passenger also very, I'm like, what's going on? Why aren't they telling us what's happening? So I can also relate. It's just frustrating not being in control. So I've just taken I've traveled more as a passenger lately than as a flight attendant,
right?
Commercially. And so I now just am like, it's out of my hands. I'm along for the ride and just pack lots of snacks.
How long were you a flight attendant for?
Commercially 10 years. I did 10 requalifications. So every year we all have to requalify. So I did 10 of my annual trainings and then found my way to corporate. And so now I'm still doing that. I contract that out. So I've been in a flight attendant role since 2012.
Okay. Oh, wow. Perfect. Well, and before that, you were in hospitality, right?
Yeah.
Bartending, server, or
both? Yeah, but nice. Mostly serving, kind of like fine dining here in Calgary. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to name the spots?
Yes, I was. Where did I? Okay, so I started. You guys remember the Broken Plate?
That rings a bell.
It's like the Greek restaurant where you
rings a bell.
Yeah, you go for your birthday and break a plate, and then on the weekends I do the Greek dancing.
Oh, no way. I've never been to Broken Plate.
Okay. They had a bunch of locations. I think they still have one down in Willow Park.
Okay.
But, and honestly, I went not too long ago. Still great Greek food, honestly. I'll make a plug for them, sure.
Heck yeah.
Okay. Go and break a plate on your birthday. It's fun.
Sweet.
Get out that anger.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually like a nice story. It's like, represents like the material things in your life and you break it to just, focus on the non-material. It's cute. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
So and then that was like where I like my entry. And then I don't know, I was like at Catch for a while.
Yeah.
Catch.
I know we're talking about restaurants from a while back, but like, I'm born and raised in Calgary, so I'm trying to.
It was like the nice seafood restaurant attached to the Hyatt. I think like Modern Steak is there now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I was with the Notable and the Nash group for a while.
Okay. Sweet.
And then just, like little.
Oh, nice. So it was always like fine dining for the most part.
Yeah, like casual fine dining.
Or elevated dining.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I never kind of like, and then I did a lot of catering gigs for people or, events here and there.
Did you ever work with Stampede Catering?
Sure did. Yeah, I worked at Ranahan's for a while.
Oh, nice. Too. Yeah. I remember all that. Yeah. I worked there when I was a teenager and a little bit into my early 20s, just as a part-time gig while I was like going to school and everything like that. Okay.
That's actually how I found my way to corporate aviation during the pandemic. So remember Open for Summer? There was the Open for Summer campaign where like during the pandemic, everything opened up again for summer.
Okay.
And it was like the first Stampede after it was kind of that weird limbo time where it wasn't quite over, but it was. And the people were still being really careful about what they were doing and optics and stuff like that. And so I was working at Ranahan's for that, and it was slower than usual, obviously, because that's like a lot of corporate clients, or corporate, customers or patrons, and so a lot of the companies were not getting their tables for that year, just to be safe or whatever.
Right.
So it was a little slower than usual, and I was serving a couple on the patio, and it was slow, and so I was just like shooting the shit with them the whole time. They were drinking margaritas. It was the rodeo. They're just having a nice time. And then they were like, "Oh, where do you work when you're not serving here?" And I was like, I'm just waiting for my call back at the airline. I kind of came out of my serving retirement just to kind of, for the summer. And they're like, "Oh shoot, we wanted you to come and work at our restaurants." They like owned a couple of restaurants in town. And I was like, "Oh, that's nice. Sure. Thanks." They're like, "Oh, but you're a flight attendant. You should work for our friend who runs this like flight attendant brokerage." So that's how I found it. So it was actually through serving that I even found my way to the like private stuff. So.
Oh yeah, no, this game, you're always meeting people from all walks of life. I mean, that's how I got the idea to do this, because I bartended so many years and so many nights where, it's just me with like, as the night's winding down, it's me with like, 5 or 6 people at the wood, and you're just getting to know these people. Like you just meet all sorts of people, and then all of a sudden you discover you have this ability to chat with anyone, anytime, about anything.
Totally.
And then you're like, well, fuck, I should make a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Naturally, you think that, right?
Here you are. You're like, I'm a natural. Shoo in. Well, and you have a nice radio voice, so it works out.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's transition to like your career change here.
Yeah.
So when you said all of a sudden you want to make that switch because you felt a bit stagnant with you saying watching too much Netflix or whatever, just hanging out. Like, how'd you switch over to like, what made you decide to go back to school for like communication specifically, and then marketing? Well, I kind of already know. Yeah, it's probably like all the social skills you develop from all this probably made you want to like head in that direction.
Yeah, that, and like I'm a born communicator. Like I was always sort of the one on, like even on the aircraft, I was always the one that was really comfortable, maybe like diffusing a situation, or like the example of talking, being on the PA and calming everyone down, like having kind of that communicator role came naturally to me. So, and then having friends in marketing already and just seeing some of the projects they were working on, I was like, oh, this is really exciting. Oh, yeah. And I just feel like it's always one of those things that people will need. Like it's always part of a business plan, and
selling is everything.
Yeah. And then now
it's hard as fuck.
Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. And there's, and it's always changing. And now with social media, it's just like constantly the pace of new things to implement, and it's like crazy. So
seems like everything's high energy now.
Oh, isn't it exhausting? Oh my gosh, I know. So part of the reason I also made that decision to go back to school was because I just happened to be working with a bunch of crews that hated their lives. We call them in the industry sky hags.
You're talking about flight attendants who hate
flight attendants. Yeah. We've all experienced them. And I have admittedly been one at times. Like at the end of a 5-day, you just want to get home and everyone's just on your nerves.
Flying around the world, like time zones, and you're on a plane, and like, I can only imagine that would do something to your neurochemistry.
Oh, and your circadian rhythms off, and maybe something. You're worried about stuff at home. Like human flight attendants are humans. You heard it here first.
So are your servers and bartenders. We're humans.
Human beings. So, like whatever you're dealing with, sometimes you have those moments of being a sky hag. And so I just happened to be working with a lot of people who were just really unhappy in their job. Mm-hmm. And then I'd be like, well, why are you here if you hate it so much, or you're so unhappy with like the changes in the company or whatever is going on? And the response was often, well, I've been doing this since I was 18 or 23. And now they're, 25 years in, or sometimes more. Like some of these flight attendants have come from other airlines or from, mergers or whatever. They've been in it, and they're like, what else am I going to do? I'm making good money. I have a good benefits. I have the flight benefits, like my whole life. What am I going to do? I I don't have anything else to fall back on. And I was like, ooh, I don't really want to be in that position ever.
Yeah.
And we have the post you're referring to, I talk about it, is like the flight attendant brain, where you're always kind of thinking worst case scenario. You're always thinking about the evacuation plan. We're trained to do that. Like that's what we're doing when we're telling you to put your bag away. It's like, well, we don't want you to die. So, we're looking out for you, actually.
Yeah.
So
maybe sometimes you're just thinking about like, what if the plane crashes? Or
that's
like,
literally what we have to think about. Like we have 60 seconds in our procedure in our jump seat where you might notice, like next time you're on takeoff and you have view of your flight attendants, you'll notice if they're talking, as soon as they turn on to the active runway, they will stop talking mid-conversation, like in the middle of a word. And you have to go into your brace position. You have to go through what we call our process, which is you go through passenger head counts, routes to evacuation, operation of emergency exits.
Shit, look at you. It's like riding a bike.
Yeah, seriously, like your commands. We go through our commands. You go through like different scenarios and how you remind yourself how to use emergency equipment. You think, oh, are we in winter, or where are we? Like, oh, am I going to be grabbing my coat? Like you're actually thinking all these things every single flight.
Yeah, because you guys have to be the like calm, cool, collected if total chaos is ensuing.
Totally. And actually, if you look at evacuation videos, I'll often actually on jump seat confessionals, I tend to share to my stories like a lot of the news and stuff that happens in aviation. So sometimes I'll share this type of content where it's actual evacuations, and you'll see the flight attendants just go like into full, it's almost like robotic. It's kind of weird where it's just like all of a sudden they're just yelling,
shit,
go, go.
Like you went into robot mode.
Right? And so we are human still. I will. But there is that kind of just, it gets so ingrained in you that that's what you're thinking. And so in that, you kind of get into that mode sometimes in life. And so I was sort of thinking that way too. I'm like, well, it'd be nice to have an evacuation plan if I end up like these people who aren't happy anymore. Yeah. And so that's when, and then that paired with the fact that I was just like being a total like POS on the road, just like eating, chips in my bed and binge watching like Netflix. I'm like, come on, I can do better than this.
Yeah.
So it was just like a bit of having a growth mindset as well. And then I was like, I'm interested in this. This is something I know I'd be good at. And I was right. So nice. Yeah, that was kind of the idea. And then I did have to blow the slide, as they say.
Yeah, exactly.
I did. I had to evacuate. So
the
good thing I did that.
Yeah, no, good for you. Good for you. I went through that too. I mean, I was, the start of all this, or taking the chance to do all this, came from me work. I used to work in oil and gas, and I was in I had an office. It was overlooking downtown. And I looked around and I was just seeing like, man, like this could be the next 40 years if I play my cards wrong or whatever, and I don't know. Yeah. And, but yeah, like you, I'm like, I got to make a change. Cause like you reach a point where it's either you live with that empty feeling, or you make the changes, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, like, kudos to you, because a lot of people don't, as you've seen, the sky hags. I could not imagine that.
Well, and we can all like,
you can always go back to it too. Totally. You know what I mean? Like, it's why I don't know. Maybe people are just so caught up with like I don't know. It's hard to like learn more as you get older or something, or especially if your routine is or you're not taking care of yourself and you're so worn down or whatnot. It's hard to like I don't just change your mindset. Like that,
Well, and I think people get really comfortable with their routines in their lives, but also one thing I was noticing about these flight attendants is they had built their life so closely like cushioned with the job that everything, all their bills, like everything, it would have been, I can see that. It's like you would have had to either have like a partner being able to kind of like support you in a change like that, or you're kind of like, okay, I have to make some pretty big changes and start from square one, it would feel like. So I've been fortunate to be able to kind of like transition slowly and still have the flying part-time and then work the creative and communication stuff up slowly and build it and like kind of as I phase out. I hope I never phase out.
Planning your execution for the transition.
Yeah. Yeah. So
okay. So right now the just plugging your the business here, like what kind of businesses are you helping right now when with their social media or their content strategy? Like can you give me examples of some of the clients you're working with right now?
Yeah. So like you mentioned at the beginning, one of my biggest clients is the Mustard Seed. So nonprofit has been a big one. That's been a huge learning curve. And I also have an amazing mentor and boss there. So just really have enjoyed working for them. And it kind of also is always nice feeling like your work is making an impact as well, even though I'm not, front lines. Obviously their social media strategy supports their
how'd you link up with the Mustard Seed? Did they seek you out or you sought them out? Or
no, they were looking for their communications team was looking for somebody to run their social media. And I knew somebody in the organization who knew that they were looking and just recommended me. So it was kind of word of mouth.
For people who don't know, can you explain to people what the Mustard Seed is?
Yes. Oh, yeah. So the Mustard Seed is a nonprofit organization here in Calgary, and also in 4 other cities, and they're growing. But they're in Calgary, Red Deer, Edmonton, Medicine Hat, and Kamloops, and they support people experiencing homelessness and poverty. So, most people would know them for their emergency shelter, but there's also housing and employment, different advocacy, and then, obviously connecting people who need the services with whatever they need to kind of get back on their feet. Yeah.
So right now the Mustard Seed, like if I go to the Mustard Seed Instagram, that's you right now handling that?
Oh, it's a team. We have a team. So I kind of deal more with the strategy and direction, but yeah, we have like content coordinators and
okay.
Yeah, so it's great. Yeah, we have a few exciting projects on the go. And
sweet.
Yeah.
What are the other accounts you have going on then?
So
you help restaurants and stuff? Or?
Well, I was actually for quite some time working with Notable in the Nash. That's actually how I kind of started with the social media management part of it. And I was fortunate that the chef owner there really trusted me. And because I had worked for his company or for his restaurant for so long, that he was just like, us, what we're about. So just have fun, put everything you've learned to work. And I was able to kind of really develop their, content strategy a little bit. So,
is it for like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, or is it like which platforms do you use?
So I have my favorites. Like I love Instagram. I think it's just like the millennial in me. I don't know.
Yeah. I think someone was saying recently, it's like literally traceable now, like 40 and up use Facebook still, 30 to 40 is Instagram or something. And then 15 to like 25 is TikTok or something. And then, or something like that. Like someone mentioned that the other day, but I did not fact check. I'm like, sounds about right for me. Like, cause like when I first started, I did use Facebook, but then as Instagram rolled in, I started using Instagram. But then by the time TikTok rolled around, I was like, man, I just got getting my, getting used to Instagram. So fuck TikTok. And then all of a sudden, like, now I'm using that a little bit, but, man, I sound old.
Well, TikTok is just so much work for me.
It's
like
different too. I don't know.
Yeah. You get into a routine, right? With your usage. So, like I have my favorites in terms of like my own usage and like what platforms I like and what feel most comfortable for me. But what I actually do is like what I tend to do is I'll work with like entrepreneurs or like I'm not usually the one like on the accounts. I'm the one developing their strategy. So if it's like a new business or a
When you say
company.
strategy, sorry to interrupt. When you say strategy, do you mean like, hey, post at this time and when post at this time, or it's like post specifically this picture, or like how
Yeah,
to do a
like
caption, how to do a
it can get
hashtag?
into content, sort of content strategy, platform strategy, kind of aligning the business's marketing goals with social media. So
Mhm.
determining, oh, okay, like you only have one person available to manage all of your social media. Maybe you shouldn't be on every single platform, because that is
Takes up
just
a lot of
it's
time.
gonna be so much time. It's gonna dilute what you're able to put out there. Let's determine who's your target audience. Are they the 40s, 40 plus? Okay, then maybe Facebook's a good option for you. Are they, are you trying to reach a younger demographic? Okay, might be worth investing in a TikTok account, figuring out, and then also implementing a strategy for content gathering, content creation. People don't, I think people are waking up to it now, but in the last few years, I've really noticed it's only like kind of now that people are starting to be like, oh, I'm okay, this is actually serious. Like,
Yeah.
we need to actually consider this. Like, most companies, especially the ones run by like older generations,
Mhm.
almost like social media. I hate social media. I hate
Yeah.
it. And it's like, I get that. It's a toxic place to be.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
It is.
I get exactly what you're saying right now. Cause I don't know, like before I started this, I was actually almost no social media presence because I use social media, but just for what I needed to. Like,
Yeah.
I hated scrolling other people's stuff because it just like whatever, it just sends my mind into a gnarly place or whatever.
Totally.
So I just control what I like to watch. But then as I started realizing just the data coming out, like think about it, if you're still grabbing a newspaper to go look for an article versus like your phone can literally so much faster. It'll suggest things. It'll do this, and then you can literally get more info quicker, faster. You can reach it out more. It like sits in the mind longer. Like,
Yeah.
and to ignore that is you're thinking like a dinosaur, and you are falling behind. But now it's moving even faster. Now it's going in a whole other direction that I don't know. But I do know, it's funny. I went from one extreme to the other. Now I'm like immersed in the technology.
Yeah, for sure.
To live my life now. But it's like, but I guess that's like anything. I mean, it's no different than probably, well, it's no different than anything. Like I mean, I'm big. This isn't veering off course too far, but it's like that new show Shogun came out.
Yeah.
And it was about like Japanese samurais.
Oh yeah.
And then it just made me think of The Last Samurai, when in that movie when Tom Cruise, his character essentially was trying to integrate Japan back with the world, because they closed their doors for like 100 years. And during that period, they didn't, catch up with the technology. And now next, they're still using bows and arrows and swords when other armies are using like full blown like cannons and everything. So
that's actually a really good analogy for this
for
marketing
business,
stuff, because it's like, if you're not willing to get on board with some of these like tools and technologies that are, really coming up and rapidly changing, it's like you will find yourself with the bow and arrow against, a drone.
Quite literally.
You'll be like, you have no chance.
But on the flip side, though, it's also getting heavily saturated too.
Hugely saturated. And then now it's also mitigating the risk of, misinformation and people, it isn't always a healthy place. People aren't always using it with integrity. They're now with AI,
I would say the integrity is completely shot. That's why it's so, I don't know how I feel about it though, because sometimes I'm like, oh, enough already. I have to put my phone down and like go work out and just kind of like exist again without the phone. And then I'm like, wow, I feel way better.
Yeah.
But then again, right after, it only takes a couple of minutes of conversation with someone where I'm out of the loop about something really important. And then I'm like, fuck, like had I just scrolled a bit, I would have caught that too. And I don't know what the answer is, because this is a whole new animal. Like I don't think in recorded history we've ever had this, except for, well, now there's always people assuming that there were aliens around back in the day, and that this was actually done before already and it imploded or something.
Well, I mean, even like in public relations and PR and communications, like it's not new. The usage of kind of spinning narratives or creating fear, propaganda.
Yeah.
Actually, the word public relations was a rebrand from propaganda. It's like the guy who started public relations came over after World War I and was like, people don't like the word propaganda. What are we going to call it now? And he called it public relations. That's Edward Bernays, if anyone wants to fact check that.
Yes.
But basically, like, my approach is, you can't, the tool has pros and cons. Everything has pros and cons. Everything's gonna be on that spectrum of like good and evil, bad and good, whatever, of everything. And so you can really focus on that negative aspect of it, and it can be such a negative place to be. But one of the things that I've done for myself, and I'm not always perfect at it, is just curating your feeds so that it's somewhere that you like to be. Like, if you're going to be on there, like, I don't feel the need to have a lot of news in my feed because it's not great for me. I choose to get my news from somewhere else and not on social media. I'll go, straight to the
mainstream media.
Ooh, that's like a bad word these days.
Yeah, for now, until mainstream media becomes more reliable than social media. I don't know. It seems to be flip-flopping because, for a while their mainstream seemed way off, and then you confirm it yourself on certain things. But now it seems like social media is getting way off.
Yeah, it is for sure.
Man, I don't know how to juggle this. Like, but one thing I do notice, like, and this sounds biased, but businesses should have podcasts. That's what I'm noticing, because that gives, like, the businesses that I've noticed that are kind of like venturing in and they have done some podcasts even out of this room, it's like they've noticed a difference in awareness and like getting more business and clients from like all walks. Like there's, there's, it's not just other restaurants coming in here. There's literally like tech companies coming in here, and like complete corporate aspects of like a company, like a human resource group coming in here. It's like they're making podcasts now because it I don't know, makes people more, there's less mystery when you're trying to apply for a job at that place or whatever. Because in the past, it's like you're applying for a job, you're just, all you see is this is the company, maybe this is the website, but how cool it'd be to like see the CEO on a podcast. You're like, oh, this is who I'm potentially wanting to work for, and then you get to know their personality and stuff like that. And like, I find podcasting now is like essential for like any business, really, like just to grow it, give it a little bit more pizzazz, if you will,
Oh yeah, like I recommend podcasting as a content strategy all the time because of that. People want transparency, and people want to know that I actually think because of social media, AI, all of this disconnection we felt in the last few years, pandemic, all this stuff, there's this huge need for reconnection, and people want that human sort of connection with, where they're putting their dollars or whatever. But also, I think this next generation coming up, I love Gen Z. I love this generation coming in because they're holding people a little bit more accountable, and like in terms of that authentic transparency thing. Like that's what I'm noticing anyways, working with them. I work with a lot of Gen Zs just because of the content creation.
Way, they're the future.
Totally.
So whether you like what they're doing or not, that's what's going to be done.
Totally. Yeah. So they're a lot more, I don't know. I think that's driving it a little bit. And even in how you see the difference between how curated content is on Instagram versus that kind of more behind the scenes, raw kind of, presentation on TikTok. It's like people are in their gym, gear telling you about their business because it's just like, hey, this is what I do. And I'm kind of juggling it all just like you, like stars. They're just like us.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like almost like everyone has like a mini TV show kind of about themselves. but I would like, I just feel like, to piggyback off of what you're saying, like the podcasting thing too is everyone's not going to have time to listen to everyone's podcast, right?
Mm-mm.
But people they don't create that time to do this. Like what, like when would we talk like this if we weren't shooting a podcast? You would think we'd talk maybe like this over a beer, but
True.
it will only last maybe 20 minutes before it becomes like joking around or like a party vibe kicks in or something, right?
Or we're distracted. Yeah.
And then like this is like direct, like we're dialed in,
Yeah.
like
Focus.
focused,
Yeah.
and technically like we're strangers chatting it up,
Totally,
right?
yeah.
So it develops that getting along thing, and I don't know, like I think it's a beautiful thing because you also discover more manners, I guess, again, on how to talk. Or sometimes not. I mean, I've had so many podcasts in here where, I mean, my guests are just getting hammered. So, and then like, those are fun too, right?
Those are fun. Hey, that was an option. No,
yeah. That was the whole business concept. Podcast bar. And,
true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, like right now, yeah. But I did at the same time, I don't want to hold this idea so be married to this idea that you have to do like all this technology, because maybe this will just turn around in 3 months from now. Maybe we'll notice the mental health crisis is ramping up due to all this technology, and next thing you know it, there might be this complete reverse where you just see a bunch of people, I'm using my imagination here, like having communal living and going back out into the woods and camping and leaving their phones, because I don't know.
That's actually a really good point, because I have actually a few entrepreneur clients that their audiences are those people, like a lot more kind of wanting to get back into, setting a lot more boundaries around their screen time and being a lot more intentional with how they live like in the real world, because that is the risk of all of this social media and tech, is like you all of a sudden, it's like that Ready Player One. Did you ever see that?
I know what it is, but I've never seen it.
It's like they all of a sudden you're just
I've seen bits of it.
You're like virtual, it's like which one's real. And I think that's like the fear with some of this virtual reality stuff, and that you're right. You unplug a server, it's all gone.
Yeah.
Who's got the keys to that room? That's kind of crazy to think about.
What's also realizing, like for instance, our body, we get hungry 3 times a day, right?
Yeah.
And when you're a little kid, all of a sudden, I don't know, you got a crush on someone. Like you start to notice these things that you need, right? Like, and then I feel like right now our minds and physical bodies isn't quite ready for social media. Like we're not supposed to be getting, I don't know, like you go on a date, but then all of a sudden your phone has like just so much like sexual vibe to it, with like all these pretty girls and everything like that. Now you're being inundated with like all this fiction at the same time you have a real life person to interact with, and like that can't be natural either,
No.
like in any capacity, even and then just the amount of just shocking footage you can see sometimes, right? Which is like, but again, but all these have counter arguments, because it's like, this is real life, this is happening, this is what's around, so you're living under a rock if you don't expose all that. But I guess a lot of people, they're just not in a good place with their mental health, if you will, to be able to take on all this. It seems to be making everything worse.
It is. I agree. And I think that's like part of the consideration, even when doing, being in this business now of social media, and I'm not even advocating for social media. I just kind of like found myself here, and I just happen to have more of a positive relationship with it than not. That's not entirely true too. Like I'm currently, like my screen time is crazy, and that's something I'm intentionally working on, because
how many hours are we talking?
Oh my gosh, the other day it was like 8 hours.
Fuck.
It was so bad.
Whoa, that means like
I'm also working, so I'm also kind of like, hey, how do I create?
It's not the same if you're working.
I know, but it's hard. It's hard to even decipher when I'm working and when I'm not, because I'll like still go on my own feed at that time.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. But like it's true. You have to be mindful.
I noticed with me, like, because I do have OCD in a bunch of things. They're in the weirdest formats. But I noticed with me, like with my phone, I have to make sure I don't see any like like example, notifications, right? Like, because I don't like to see, because it creates in my anxiety and OCD like something undone.
Yeah.
So then if I'm expecting 10 emails, I notice like that's why sometimes I fall behind on emails, because I'm all of a sudden I'm like, if I see 10, I either put it down until I allot time. I'm like, email time is now, but by the time I pick it back up, now it says 30. And now, but I'm like tackling them down, versus if I can just calmly roll with it, like answer one as I do something else. And like, I notice it brings out a lot of your own processes as a human. Like, and because I realize more than ever now, I'm like, man, I'm like really regimented and not really like as flexible as I thought or whatever. And then as an example, that's kind of how we got podcasting today in a weird way. I was like, I would be flexible. Like, you know, like, and I just rolled with it.
Yeah, totally.
Like, so like, I realize now with technology, it's like, you have to be flexible. That's one thing I've realized. It doesn't create this, it doesn't favor the highly regimented, you know?
Yeah.
Because like the email's right in your hand.
Yeah.
You're choosing not to look at it now. What if, but then say you didn't look at it in that millisecond or a second, you might have missed the business deal, or like someone moved on. And so then it's like that one gets tricky too, you know? It's like, so
yeah. Well, and then you have to remember that these platforms are literally trying to get you to be on them all the time.
That's how they make money.
And it's like they have psychologists on their payroll telling them how to help with the dopamine hits, you know? Yeah. So they're not the platforms themselves, like Instagram, Meta, all these people, they're not friendly to human well-being. No. And so you have to be kind of on top of that yourself. And like I said, I'm working on that too. And then, you know, when that's something that I consider sometimes when working with especially small business or entrepreneurs who want to be really involved in the digital space, you have to kind of bring that to them as a consideration. Well, is this going to be good for you? Who's going to be on top of this? And like, what if you need to be, you know, offline for a week? Is there going to be somebody who's able to help you with that? Like, these are all things you have to think about. And I think people haven't been thinking about it up until kind of more recently as more of like a heavy consideration in running your business.
Okay, so you have a 9-year-old.
I do, yeah.
A son or a daughter?
Daughter, yeah.
Daughter. Okay,
yeah.
Like, how are you parenting her social media use?
Okay, so that's
what's going on with their world? Like,
does
everyone have phones already at that age, and they're just
Gen Alpha. That's what this generation is called.
Gen Alpha.
Gen Alpha, yeah.
Okay.
And it is really interesting. So I am very, I would say I'm not as strict on her screen time as I am on the value that her screen time is giving her. Uh-huh. So she's 9 years old. She was a pandemic kid. Like, and when I say that, I mean, all kids were during that time, but
she's lost 2 years of her life.
Well, the lockdowns started when she was halfway through kindergarten. And then her first kind of normal year back to school was grade 3. So like kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2, crazy developmental years.
They're all crazy. Elementary to high school. Every year is like a world.
It's true. It's true. And
it kind of becomes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, in terms of screen time, unfortunately, that was something that we relied on more during the pandemic. And at her age, like, you know, I probably in different circumstances would have liked to have a little bit more of like a handle on that, but it was what it was. It was like a sign of the times. And so I approached it more as like, okay, again, this can be a really dangerous place to be. And that's something I tell her all the time. The internet is a dangerous place.
Oh, yeah.
Dangerous. Oh, you know those kidnappers who used to drive by in the white trucks? They don't do that anymore. No, they actually go and pretend that they're a 6-year-old.
They start to like
groom you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're brainwashing you, man.
So
yeah, Drake's brainwashing.
You know what side you're on.
Let's go, Kendrick. No, I do like Drake too. Kendrick's burning him hard.
Oh man, you know, like real recognizes real. Yeah. And it's just like, sorry, bro, you lost.
Yeah. And then Diddy's just been doing it just the more retro way, I guess. Straight, like in person, like hang out with me.
Yeah.
Like, anyway.
Yeah.
So warning your daughter about that. And it's
totally,
scary, man. It's scary.
Yeah. So, you know, one thing that we are really careful about is just like the communication around what content she's ingesting. So like YouTube is one, but you know, we try to make it either educational or there's some value there. So she's really creative and crafty. So she watches a lot of creators who teach her how to do crafts and do all these things. So things that then can translate to her real world and give her kind of real world experiences as well. And then, you know, with some of the games that they play, just being really on top of the updates and stuff like that. I follow a few accounts that are actually for digital safety and parenting. And so then they'll actually put out PSAs for parents when, you know, Meta comes out with an update and then all of the privacy settings change without you knowing. And then you can kind of go in and do that. So just like being on top of that kind of stuff, because it's kind of scary what, even with everything that we've done to kind of mitigate it, like you just can't help some of the stuff that they'll see, or you know, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm this terrible parent. But then at the same time, like my kid knows more about so much stuff than me. Like it's crazy how much she knows. I'm just like,
it's weird. Like when I talk to well, anyone who's like 18, 19, because you know, like we have younger staff members too, right, and things like that. It's once you break that ice, because I do notice there's a bit of social nervousness, because they you know, they look at you like, oh, I'm talking to an adult or whatever. But, you know, but I'm like, I don't even know what an adult really is anymore, because of like an adult from my dad to me is so different from this to that because of this phone thing. But yeah, like I just know they're absorbing info at like such a more rapid rate than I am, because like, I don't know, they don't have a job yet.
Well, and she doesn't, she's not allowed on social media. Like she doesn't have any.
She's way too young for that.
Way too young.
I don't.
Yeah, no, no, I feel like
young. You know?
But there are kids. She asked me, when can I have an Instagram account? And I was like, when you can afford your own phone and you're paying for your own phone. Because in my mind, I'm like, by then you'll have a job. And I feel like that's like a decent, I don't know. Honestly, everyone's just doing their best. I really try not to judge, you know, other parents who have different, and I'm sure even like for me, the amount that like, so my daughter does have a YouTube account, but it's completely anonymous, and she's never allowed to show her voice or her face, or say her name or anything. So it's just like, it's a creator space for her, because this generation likes to create digitally.
I had a previous guest on, maybe won't name the name right now, but anyway, she a YouTuber, and has a huge following. Her videos used to be like some were viral, like you know, we're talking about like over 10 million. And but she often had videos of like her kid was in and out of it, right? And her kid was like 2 to 5 or whatever the age was. But so eventually she took her kid off her videos, made it more like, she switched her style of contenting, and there was nothing nefarious going on. Her kid was just in the video, like in a vlog or whatever. And all of a sudden she noticed like her video viewage had literally dropped tremendously. And then she was like, oh no, that's when she realized like, man, there's some dark reasons why people were watching the videos, you know, and like, and I don't know. And like, I was just sitting there like, well, I was like, fuck, man. Like, it's like, it's so brutal, man. Like it's, I don't know, like, I can't quite put my finger on it, but I feel the social media game, it's a weapon. You got to wield it with caution, like because it's so dangerous right now. Like, especially the energy it creates. Like, I feel like it always like, I do feel like it's not for everyone, because it's so nefarious. Sometimes you can feel that ominous, dark, like
there's an underbelly.
Like, you know, like I'm not like, you know, I'm not stupid religious or anything, but it's like Satan's at work for sure.
100%.
You just feel it, and you're just kind of like
it is a very, very powerful tool for any type of intention that you have. And so it's, unfortunately, I feel like we're in a time in the world collectively where there's like a bit of a battle of that. Like, it just seems like it's so extreme, and everybody's, you know, either on one side or the other. And there is that like kind of, there is a very dark kind of energy on these platforms. And even with AI, like AI freaks me out. I think we're going to see
almost all of it is used to slander someone sexually.
Yeah. Or,
like
or just like
the Taylor Swift whole thing or whatever. Right?
Yeah. Or like spread lies.
Yeah, brutal. It's brutal.
And then like, if you don't have the eye for it, or you don't you're not familiar with it, it's so good. So, I mean, I was admittedly one of the people very tricked at the Met Gala. I thought Rihanna was there. I thought, Katy Perry, like all of these, and it was all AI. I was like, oh my gosh, look at who knew they were going to be there. And it was all fake.
Yeah.
And it was crazy how realistic I was.
Man. But I don't feel like anyone necessarily is more gullible than the previous generation. This is just the sign of the times. Because I mean, back in the 60s, like people were like, remember what they saw on TV, and then they thought that was like, for real or whatever. Like
the moon landing.
Yeah,
just
the
kidding.
moon landing. Well, certain footage was clearly, they say it's a reenactment now and then. But I'm like, at the time, I'm pretty sure they didn't emphasize that. They were just trying to prove like, like, hey, we beat Russia to space or whatever.
Right.
And I don't know. It's like, but right now I feel like we're dealing with different animals as far as, even just how history is being recorded, because back then it's all told from a certain standpoint. You can only get so much info, but now there's like, everyone is there with their phone witnessing. So barely anyone can tell the same story the same way because everyone has a different vantage point. Right. So I don't know. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to start to wind this down.
Sure. Yeah. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah. Wow. So right now, what's in the foreseeable future for you for just plug along with the media game and do you continue part-time flight attendant? Yeah.
So I have, being a contract with the private flight attending, I always kind of do, I average maybe 1 or 2 trips a month, just kind of keep my wings. I'd be really sad if I had to clip my wings permanently. And then, I have a few proposals in for some big projects. I'm hoping to get something, maybe catch a big fish or 2 and just have something a little bit, I've been plugging away at a lot of little projects or, little contracts here and there that have been awesome because it's kind of built up that toolbox. But now I'm feeling a lot more confident with what I have to offer and what my skills are. And I have a little bit more clarity in terms of, direction and I'm learning every single day. You're learning with this stuff, right? So it's just exciting to be able to kind of apply that on a day-to-day basis. So hopefully in the next year or 2, I'll be on the golf course. Cause that's actually what I realized is having a seat at the table in a lot of these industries. You'd know this from corporate Calgary.
Yeah.
It's not a seat at the table. It's a tea time at the golf course.
Unfortunately, I never got into golf. Wow. I've golfed. I used to own some clubs. I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? You're like,
I actually do like golf. What am I saying? I do like golf. I just couldn't keep affording it.
That's it. It's so, it's in it. Yeah. It's definitely one of those things. I'm kind of just seeing where
just plugging down your lanes here that you said.
And just working hard and trying to make sure everybody and doing like meaningful work is exciting for me. Like, so this, these projects with the mustard seed are nice to see, them coming into fruition. And so,
Perfect.
More to come for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I absolutely wish you the best of luck in all these endeavors. I'm sure we'll talk again. But all right, everyone, Kat's information will be in the show notes there. And if you want to get, use her marketing services, it will be there as well. Reach out. Okay. All right, Kat.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Bye.